All right, guys, welcome to today's math lesson. Today's lesson is going to be just a little bit different from yesterday's, and only because today you are going to have way more problems to answer on your Nearpod so that you can show what you know. Today, we will not be taking any notes in our math journal. We're just going to be responding on the Nearpod screen. All right, guys, let's begin.
What's up, mathlete? Is your brain ready for a workout? Then let's warm up.
All right, so here we are. Our first problem says arrange 8 items into 2 rows of 4. Now, because we are not able to just do that at the same time virtually using this particular platform, I am going to create our first array. And so pay very close attention so that we can make sure that you understand how to make this array if you had to do it on your own. So our problem tells us that we have 8 total items that are in our array and that they need to be arranged in 2 rows with 4 items in each row. And so as I've shared with you before, when I make an array, I always start with my rows. And so for this problem, we have 2 rows. Here's my row number 1, and here's my row number 2. And then I'm going to place my items in each row. For this problem, I need 4 items in each row. 1, 2, 3, 4. And then my second row also gets 4 items. 1, 2, 3, 4. All right, time for you to get started. The first problem says to skip count by 4 2 times. Skip count by 4 2 times. And there are 2 boxes here, which means there are 2 numbers that we're looking for. When the question pops up on your screen, I want you to write the two numbers that we're looking for and separate them by a comma. So, for example, if this was my array, I'm just going to draw a quick little sketch here. So, if this was my array and I was skip counting, I would know that the first row is 2 and the second row is 4. When you ask me for my answer in Nearpod, I would write 2, comma, 4. That is the way I would write my skip counting numbers in Nearpod because the 2 is my first number, the comma separates them, and the 4 is my next number. So at this time in your Nearpod, please write the numbers that belong at the end of this box right here, each of these boxes, box 1 and box 2, if I am skip counting by 4. All right, let's see how you did. If we were skip counting by 4, at the end of the first row, we would have the number 4. At the end of the second row, we would have the number 8. Now we're being asked to rearrange our array. Originally, we took our array and we had it in 2 rows of 4. Now we're being asked to rearrange our array in 4 rows of 2. So I'm going to start by making 4 rows, row 1, row 2, row 3, and row 4. And I'm going to make sure that each row has 2 counters. 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2. All right, time to skip count again. This time, we're going to skip count by 2 4 times. Remember, for each of your numbers, you are going to place a comma between them. So, for example, for my very first answer, if my first answer was A, which we know it's not A because we're talking about numbers and not letters, I would write an A and then a comma. The next one, I would write B and then a comma. The next one is C and then a comma and then D. And then I would press enter on my Nearpod. So again, you are skip counting by 2 4 times. So you're not writing these letters, you're writing the numbers that you would get if you skip count by 2, and you are separating them each by a comma. All right, well, let's see how we did. If I was skip counting by 2s, my first number, of course, would be 2. The next number is 4, followed by 6, and then 8. So on your page, you should have listed 2, comma, 4, comma, 6, comma, and then 8. All right. Here is a multiple choice question for you to answer. It says, look at the 2 arrays that you just made. How is the skip counting related? Look at the 2 arrays that you just made. How is the skip counting related? Is it the first array is 2 4s and the second array is 4 2s? Or the second choice, the 2 arrays have different totals? Look at the question carefully and answer in your Nearpod now. I hope that you notice that the first array has 2 4s. So there's one row of 4 and another row of 4. The second array has 4 2s. There's a row of 2, another row of 2, another row of 2, and another row of 2. So you should have selected the first answer choice. Here's your next question. Do both arrays show 2 groups of 4? Do both arrays show 2 groups of 4? Answer in your Nearpod at this time. And so while both of the arrays look different, they both show 2 groups of 4. And we're going to talk about why.
Let's look at this picture. You can see there are 4 items in each row, so this picture shows 2 groups of 4. If I flip it like this, my 2 rows are now vertical. 1, 2. My vertical rows still make 2 groups of 4. It's the same array, just turned a different way. We have a special name for a row when it's vertical. We call it a column.
All right, guys. And so let's take a look at this new array. We are going to complete the table, but we're going to complete it in parts. So let's start with the number of rows. In your Nearpod, please tell me how many rows you see. Did you say that you see 2 rows? We have 1 row, 2 rows. So there are 2 rows in this array. Now in your Nearpod, tell me, how many columns do you see? Remember, columns run straight up and down. How many columns do you see? Let's count them together. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. There are 5 columns. This array has 2 rows, and 5 columns. All right, that is the exact same array, but this time we're going to rotate it. Now, in your Nearpod, tell me how many rows we have now. Remember, our rows run straight across from left to right. Our rows are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We have 5 rows now. Now in the Nearpod, tell me how many columns you see. Remember, columns go up and down. This problem has 2 columns. We're going to fill in our table for this new array. We're going to start with the number of rows that we see. In the Nearpod, tell me how many rows are in this array. Let's count them together. Remember, our rows go straight across. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. This array has 7 rows. Now, in your Nearpod, tell me how many columns you see. Let's count them. Columns go straight up and down. 1, 2. This array has 2 columns. Let's see what happens if we flip it. Now, in your Nearpod, tell me how many rows do you see? Remember, our rows go straight across. 1, 2. This array now has 2 rows. In your Nearpod, tell me how many columns you see. Did you say 7? I'm beginning to notice a trend. When we flipped our array, our rows and columns switched. We've got another one. In your Nearpod, tell me how many rows you see. Did you identify that there are 1, 2, 3 rows? How many columns do you see? Answer in your Nearpod now. Remember, columns run up and down. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. There are 6 columns. Let's flip it. Tell me quickly in the Nearpod. Remember, there is a pattern. We've flipped our array, so our rows and columns have flipped as well. So how many rows do we have now? That's right, we have 6 rows. Tell me how many columns we have. Absolutely. We now have 3 columns.
Let's take a look at this new array. We have 3 rows and 2 columns. 2, 4, 6, and 6 total items. Now let's write a multiplication sentence that can describe this array. We can say there are 3 rows times 2 columns. That equals 6 total items. We can rotate the array and then say that 2 rows times 3 columns also equals 6 total items. You try.
All right, let's try some. We are now going to write a multiplication sentence to describe our array. I want you to write the complete multiplication sentence to describe this array in your Nearpod. Remember, a multiplication sentence has a factor, a multiplication symbol, another factor, an equal sign, and then a product. Please write your multiplication sentence to describe this array in the Nearpod now. Did you say that your multiplication sentence was 1, 2, 3 to describe the number of rows, 1, 2 to describe the number of columns, for a total of 6? Your multiplication sentence should have read 3 times 2 equals 6. Now, let's rotate our array and describe this one. Please write your multiplication sentence in the Nearpod at this time. When we flipped our array, we no longer had 3 rows, we now have 2. So my first factor is 2. We're going to multiply by our columns. We now have 3 columns. And we still have 6 total counters. When we flipped our array, our new multiplication sentence is 2 times 3 equals 6. Let's do another one. Let's start with the first multiplication sentence as the array looks now. Write the entire multiplication sentence in your Nearpod at this time. Did you say that your first factor is 4 because we have 4 rows times 3 because we have 3 columns for a total of 12 counters? Let's flip our array. Tell me what your new multiplication sentence is. Write it in your Nearpod at this time. Did you say that the new multiplication sentence is 3 times 4 equals 12? Great job, guys. Let's write a multiplication sentence to describe each of these arrays. Let's start with this array right here. In your Nearpod, please write the multiplication sentence to describe this array now. Did you say that this array has 2 rows and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 columns? So our multiplication equation is 2 times 6 equals 12 because that is our total. All right, everyone, let's move on to this other array. Write the multiplication sentence to describe this array in your Nearpod at this time. Did you say that the multiplication sentence to describe this array is 6 times 2 equals 12? Great job, guys. Now we've got another multiple choice question. Let's take a look at these arrays. Do the arrays have the same number of items? The array on our left side has 2 rows and 6 columns to equal 12. And the array on our right side has 6 rows and 2 columns to equal 12. In your Nearpod, tell me, do the arrays have the same number of items? I hope you said yes. They absolutely have the same number of items. So let's take a look at this equation. It says, does 6 times 2 equal 2 times 6? Yes or no? Tell me in your Nearpod now. Does 6 times 2 equal 2 times 6? Yes, it does. Because 6 times 2 equals 12, and so does 2 times 6. Because both of our arrays have the same number of items.
When we multiply, changing the order of factors doesn't change the total. 2 times 6 equals 12, and 6 times 2 equals 12. We say factors are commutative when they can switch around but the total doesn't change. Factors in a multiplication sentence follow the commutative property because we can switch their order and the total stays the same.
All right, guys. So our big money word for today is commutative. The commutative property tells us that we can flip our factors and our answer will stay the same. In your Nearpod, tell me what factor goes in the box on the screen. Well, our equation says that 5 times 3 equals blank times 5. We just learned that the commutative property tells us that we can switch our factors. So if we have 5 times 3 here, we should have 3 times 5 for our missing box. Let's look at another one. In your Nearpod, tell me what the missing factor is. I have 10 times 2 equals 2 times blank. Answer your Nearpod. Did you say 10? If you did, you're absolutely correct. 10 times 2 is equal to 2 times 10 because of the commutative property. Here's the last one. 2 times 9 is equal to blank times 2. Place your answer in Nearpod at this time. 2 times 9 equals 9 times 2 because multiplication is commutative and we can flip our factors and get the same answer. Great job today, guys. Go on over to your Google Classroom to knock out your exit ticket at this time.